given everything that's going on with net neutrality seems to be very topical. I know you've been doing a lot of work there. I mean, what do you think is particularly interesting within the whole net neutrality landscape right now?
Oh, sure. The net neutrality issue is sort of the dominant policy issue for the regulators in Washington in the internet space, but it's really part of something even bigger. What I think the Obama administration's regulatory operation at the FCC, and it's an independent agency, but obviously the leadership there is appointed by the president, confirmed by the Senate. It's a majority of Democrats, 3 Democrats to 2 Republicans, and they have a big agenda, which is really how do you promote online video as an alternative to the traditional sort of bundled subscription video product people have gotten for a long time, whether it's from the cable operator, satellite, or from even telco video sources like AT&T Uverse or Verizon Fios TV. And what they want to do is sort of empower the consumer by giving them more online options, to empower content providers on the edge to be able to, over broadband connections, get their video services directly to consumers, sort of bypassing the gatekeeper power of the traditional, subscription TV provider like the cable operator. But the cable operator also controls these broadband connections, at least has the dominant share of them. So the regulators are trying to figure out how they can sort of contain that power to enable online video to flourish and create a robust market for the over-the-top video providers. That's the big sort of agenda. So you get into net neutrality as one aspect of that. And what net neutrality is, of course, is the regulatory mandate that broadband internet service providers, whether they be cable operators or telcos, that they transmit data essentially with equal treatment to all bits, regardless of the source or the type of data that's being transmitted. And so for the video providers, and of course video is the dominant share of traffic on the internet, Netflix, for example, dominates in prime time. How do we make sure that the internet service providers that also have legacy video services are not discriminating against these online options? So net neutrality is obviously one of the big core ways they do that. They have rules now that say you can't block traffic if you're an internet service provider. You can't throttle it. In other words, sort of diminish it or degrade the traffic. And you can't engage in what's called paid prioritization. Essentially, go to a particular content provider on the edge of the network, get paid a fee to give them superior transmission versus other types of content. Because it's not just keeping the internet service providers from being unfair to online content that the regulators care about. They want to make sure that there's essentially a democratized internet, that all the video providers can be treated equally, and that those who might be the incumbent or the dominant video providers who might be able to afford to pay fees for prioritization can't use that as an advantage over others. So it's a pretty lofty ambition that the FCC is trying to pursue here, and net neutrality is a very, very big part of it. Now, the rules have been promulgated and they are in the courts, and that's why there's a lot of uncertainty over how all of this plays out in the months ahead.
I see. So Netflix's, the deals that they have with certain of the cable operators to prioritize their traffic is something that essentially goes away in a pure net neutrality type world.
Well, there's different parts of the network now. When we talk about net neutrality rules that the FCC promulgated, they're really talking about the last mile from the internet service provider to the subscriber. So if you're a Netflix subscriber, whether it's Comcast or Time Warner Cable, Charter, Verizon Fios, whoever, when they bring that Netflix content to you, the idea is they will do so they won't impair or impede that traffic in any way in that connection from the ISP to the home. Now, what Netflix has negotiated, and it has big concerns about this part of the network, is what we call interconnection, and that's when they bring their traffic to the internet service provider. It goes onto the internet service provider's network, which in turn sends it down the last mile to the user. Mm-hmm. That interconnection point is a potential choke point that Netflix is very concerned about, and they've negotiated deals with the big internet service providers to let their traffic basically through the door so that it can in turn be sent to the users. And the question is, should they pay for those interconnections in the core of the network when they bring the traffic to the ISP? And that's what Netflix has negotiated. And for example, in the Charter Time Warner Cable proposed deal, they've actually got a potential deal in place here where Charter, if the deal is approved, will agree to not charge for those interconnections, what is sometimes called a peering relationship, when networks come together to transfer, in bulk, large amounts of traffic at those interconnection points. The biggest thing to look at right now would be the court case and the aftermath of it. Because what I think could happen there is that some of the net neutrality rules, some really strict ones where they get treated like traditional telephone utilities, some of those rules could be struck down by the court. And that could have a big impact on the wireless players, giving them more flexibility, whether it's on sponsored data or other types of ways of monetizing their network assets from more than just their subscribers, but to go upstream and get more of it from the enterprise edge service and content providers. If they could do that, that could be great for them. It could be great for the infrastructure providers, tower companies, and others who support them. If the wireless environment gets more deregulated as a consequence and is seen as having even, a more positive climate, for the various models that they can pursue, I think that could be a pretty big deal, and it could lead to Congress wanting to open things up, and Democrats and Republicans to perhaps set out to create a new broadband, piece of legislation that could affect a whole lot of industries and raise a whole lot of issues. That could be a very, very big undertaking in Washington if it gets to that point, and that's very possible.
Well, thank you so much for joining us today. This has been very, very helpful, very instructive. And for those of you who are viewing this, if you have any questions, feel free to reach out. And thank you for coming on.